Why do we allow Boots, an old family firm that was one of those British traditions, to be taken over by hedge funds, move its headquarters from London to Switzerland, and not pay 20%, not pay 18%, but pay 5% in corporation tax, and pretending all their business is done in Switzerland? And there's company after company after company that does that. I live in Finsbury Park in North London, and there's a friend of mine who runs a small cafe. He gets the bus there every morning, he opens the cafe, he cooks the breakfasts, he makes the falafels, he provides the coffee, he provides the tea, he provides the support, he provides the care for everybody. He is one of those gems that's part of our community. We all know people like that. He pays his taxes, he pays his business rates, he pays his taxes, and he recognises that is his contribution to our society and our community. Across the road from him, there's a very shiny outlet owned by a global brand and a multinational corporation. It's got lots of money, it's got a very shiny front, and it's got a lot of customers in there. I think you all know the answer to this question. Who pays the most in tax? Who is the real supporter of our society? Who is the one who is not trying to rip us off and trying to contribute to society? Surely we need government to be tough on tax evasion, tough on tax fraud, tough on tax defaulting. My friend Richard Murphy, tax expert, who spoke with us last night in Norwich, he lives in Downham Market, not so far from Norwich, calculates that there's at least £50 billion per year that is evaded in the tax we all need. When people evade their tax at that level, who suffers? Children in schools, families on housing waiting lists, people that need help, opportunity and support. And so I think it's time we, as the Labour Party, were prepared to offer a different economic alternative. We went into the last election with some great policies, no question. There was some good stuff in that manifesto. But we also knew that had Labour won the election, there would still be cuts in local government spending. There would still be job losses in the Department of Work and Pensions and every other government department. We still knew that there was going to be some hard days ahead. I'm not pretending any of this is easy. It's not easy. But it's very tough when you're very poor, when you're homeless, when you're forgotten, and you're told you're a drain on society. I would rather all of us stood up for those on the margins and those who suffer, rather than stood up and agreed with those that want to continue the grotesque levels of inequality within our society. And so I was proud to be alongside Richard, Imran and other colleagues, 45 other colleagues in the Labour Party who voted against the welfare reform bill. Isn't it funny how Tories abuse our language? What kind of reform is it that takes child support away from the third and beyond that child in a family? What is it about them that thinks it's somehow or other reasonable to take £12 billion out of the welfare budget? But I want to ask you a question. If I asked you all, and I do this at every meeting, to put your hands up and say, do you support a national health service free at the point of use as a human right for all? Yeah. I'm sure every hand would go up. It's like a mass meeting where you're all agreed. Thank you very much. It's a yes for the NHS. Our NHS, by the way, is under threat, being hollowed out by all the privateers that want to take it over, and a Tory government that wants to turn it into not a universal health service, but a health service of last resort. They want to make it an emergency room, not a health service for all of us. We want, and we're going to keep, and we're going to get an NHS universal first port of call for all of us at any time in our lives when we need it. That is what the principles of this Labour movement are about. But I also ask you another question. We have become hardened and harsh as a society, where we enjoy TV programmes at the expense of people who are trying to survive on benefit. Those with disabilities being put through often the humiliation of an availability for work test. We allow some of our newspapers to routinely put the handle on anyone legitimately claiming that to which they're entitled as a benefit scrounger. Can't we instead say there's something wrong, grotesque, unpleasant and unfair about a society that knowingly allows the homeless to sleep on the streets, knowingly allows those with mental health conditions to go from hostel to hostel, those who are forced to go to food banks to try and survive? I'm not in favour of people dishonestly claiming. I'm not in favour of wasting money on subsidising high rents and low wages. But what I am in favour is a society that says we all care for each other and we all care for everyone. Surely it's a basic principle that those people that founded our movement 100 years ago and more were prepared to stand up and proudly work for and proudly campaign for, much of which was achieved. But this campaign is at one level, and it's only one level, about the election of an individual to lead our party and a deputy leader to be the deputy leader of the party. But it's also about the way politics is done. I am frankly totally disinterested when politician A calls politician B a horse, when politician B calls politician C a pig, and when politician C calls politician D a goat, and when politician E calls politician A an idiot. And so the merry-go-round goes on. The personal abuse, the name-calling, and all that. It is ridiculous. It is a waste of time. It is nothing to do with the needs, hopes, and aspirations and purposes of the vast majority of the population. So, in this campaign, we simply do not respond in any way to any kind of personal abuse or personal attack. We never have, and we never will. We are only interested in the politics and the policies, and we're interested in why we lost the last election. We're interested in why the turnout was only 65% nationally, and I'm very interested as to know why the turnout amongst young people who had registered to vote was only 47%. I think it's partly because there wasn't a clear enough alternative put. It's also because the political system, political style and policy making was an anathema to a large section of the population. And so all our documents are consultative documents. Richard launched our document for the North the other day in Leeds, and we launched that document, and we got, in our immediate consultation period, 1,200 people sending in intelligent, serious, very thoughtful proposals and suggestions. This morning we launched a very long, well, not very long, a substantial environmental document at a natural park in London. And in that we talked about how we control the energy companies and the abuse of them, or the abuse of us rather by them, and the opportunities for sustainable energy, the need to protect biodiversity and ecosystem, the need for worldwide action on climate change and all those other issues. That has attracted already a lot of interest and support. We launched a statement on women's rights, women's opportunities, and women's discrimination and the gender pay gap. We launched the economic policy document. We launched a housing statement. We're doing an awful lot of this kind of discussion, and it's attracting thousands and thousands of people who are interested in that. So whatever the results on September the 12th of this election, I want people to think about this. Are we going to knuckle down for 5 years and accept the election result, accept the cuts, accept the welfare reform bill, accept the attack on workers' rights at the place of work and trade unions as a whole, and just do nothing about it?
No.
And then allow whoever has the good fortune to be the leader of the party to write a manifesto which will be launched on March 31st, 2020? Or are we going to do things a bit differently? Are we going to do things a bit differently and have conventions, big ones, where people can come, put forward their point of view, their hopes, where ordinary members of unions and the party can put forward their views, and with the realistic expectation they will become the central theme of what the party does? Can we not be proud of the principles on which our party was founded? Can we not be proud of those that stood up in the 19th century as the Chartists to demand basic rights, those that stood up for women's right to vote, those that stood up for the NHS, those that stood up against the means testing and brutality of the 1930s, and those that stood up against the brutality of the Tories under Thatcher in the 1980s? So when they say, you're a throwback, we're a throwback to the 1980s, oh no, 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 no. Absolutely we are not. No. We have learnt a lot of lessons, and the lesson is one of mobilisation, enthusiasm, solidarity, optimism, hope, how you develop a society that works for all, not for the few. Imran mentioned some international issues. Bradford has shown the way with its internationalism, with its solidarity, with its work in the universities and elsewhere. And I've been proud to come here for Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament conferences in the past. And we are faced with a world that is complicated, that is difficult, that is dangerous. Yesterday was the 70th anniversary of the explosion of the nuclear weapon over Hiroshima. Tomorrow would be the anniversary, the 70th anniversary of the explosion of the nuclear weapon over Nagasaki. People are still dying in Japan from those cancers emanating from that explosion. I went to the Humanitarian Effects of War conference in Vienna last year, and I met people from the Marshall Islands, which was the world's nuclear testing ground in the 1950s. The cancers, the leukemia, the deformed babies are all still there from the way in which Western nations decided to use the Pacific Ocean as their testing ground. I met people from Russia who had been on testing grounds, and soldiers, nuclear test veterans of all nations who were told that they had to observe nuclear testing. I cannot, under any conscience, say that a nuclear weapon is anything other than an immoral weapon of mass destruction that can only take civilian life. It's not a defence, it's not a security, it's a very expensive thing. And so, in the discussions yesterday, we made the point that when the review, the main gate decision as it's called, for Trident comes up next year, I think we should not renew Trident. We should use that money. We should use that money that would have been spent on Trident and the submarine system to invest in high technology, to invest in defending and extending the jobs of those very skilled people that are employed on making this thing, so that their skills are not lost. Instead, they're making things that are good for all of us rather than dangerous to the entire. Are we? We are staying together, aren't we? We want a society that cares for all, don't we? We want services that care for all, don't we? We want an end to tax evasion and tax fraud. We want our party back. We want our movement back. We want hope back. And together we are very, very strong. Thank you, Bradford, for this wonderful evening here tonight.